And good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us on Tech Thursday with Set Solutions. My name is Michael Farnham. I'm CTO with Set Solutions. Um, Real quickly, just want to give you the concept of Tech Thursday if this is the first time you've joined us. When we do these external facing Tech Thursdays, what we're doing is giving you, and as our customer, an insight into what we do internally at Set Solutions for staying up to date with our customer or with our vendors, actually with our vendor partners. So today we're doing that with deepwatch. So we want to stay up to date to provide value with you for you, our customers, and we just wanted to give you kind of an insight into how we do that. So we are doing that with deepwatch today. I will introduce them in just a second, but a couple of quick housekeeping items. First of all, you should have received for if you're on here today for registering a gift card for lunch. If you have not received that, please reach out to Lauren Lynch, who is on this video with us on this session, and you should have that email from her. She can get you your gift card and get you set up. Second, we do have a questionnaire at the end of this. If you're registered for this and have attended, you will get a questionnaire. If you can fill that out, it helps us know how well we're doing and helps you show if you want any kind of follow-up with deepwatch, and you will be entered into a drawing for a $100 gift card from deepwatch. So it's worth the time. It gives us some good feedback and lets us know if you want us to do any follow-up from deepwatch. So would appreciate you answering that. And then lastly, this is we do like to have some interactivity on here. Obviously everybody's muted on here, but we do have the Q&A panel that's available on Zoom. If you have any questions, please send those to us in the Q&A and we'll get those answered. Typically we do those at the end. If something's really compelling and I think Corey would want to answer it quickly, then I will definitely pass that on to him. But please, as we go on, enter those questions into the Q&A panel. If you can use the Q&A panel, that's the best place to do it as well. I'll be monitoring that. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Corey Bodson. Corey is the CTO with deepwatch. He's going to be showing us all things deepwatch today. Thank you very much, Corey, for joining us, and take it away.
Thanks, Michael. Nice to talk with you again. Glad to be here. So hello, everybody, and thanks for joining us. As Michael says, Tech Thursday, I'm going to talk a little bit about deepwatch, some of the exciting things we're doing with some of our capabilities. I'm measuring your security, some ML we're working on, all sorts of fun stuff. But first, let's jump right in. And Michael told you a little bit about me. I am Chief Technology Officer at deepwatch. I have been in the industry, 25 years at this point, about 15 years on the vendor side, companies like ExtraHop, Qualys, Tenable. Before that, I was actually on the customer side. I ran security groups at places like Charles Schwab and Wells Fargo. But before that, I was doing cooking, which is what my true passion is. And as it turns out, I've learned a bit over the years that there are a lot of things in building products that are very similar to cooking, with having the right technique, having the right ingredients, etc. So as you can see, I started pretty young. My mother did a great job of getting me comfortable with cooking, which is great. My mother did not do such a great job with choosing my wardrobe. There's the 70s for you. You're all probably blinded now, but thanks, Mom. I'm not sure if my sense of fashion has gotten any better, but I do think my ability to cook has gotten a little bit better. We were talking before we got started here about what good barbecue is, and I like to think my pulled pork does okay. So happy to talk about technology, but I can't do anything without talking about food first. Now that we got talking food out of the way, let me quickly just talk a little bit about deepwatch. Just some vital stats on us. We are an MDR, Managed Detection and Response provider. We've been around as a company for about a year and a half, roughly, but we actually started inside GuidePoint prior to that as the VSOC offering. And we do lots of really interesting things, or at least we have a lot of customers who think we do interesting things. You can see some of the customers we've got here. We recently closed a Series B investment round led by Goldman Sachs. And the only reason I mention that is that's allowing us to really accelerate some of the technology and intellectual property I'm going to show coming up. But we're really excited. They're great partners, and I think you're going to see some exciting things from us. So I want to just start by talking a little bit about what deepwatch does. I'll start with our services. I mentioned we're a managed detection response provider. We also do things like managed vulnerability management or endpoint detection response for our customers. The way that we deliver those services leans heavily on some of our key solutions in IP, Deepwatch Lens, which is powered by our Deepwatch maturity models, and we're working on our Deepwatch Discover product. Those are going to be the heart of this presentation. I'm going to talk quite a bit about, but those solutions are built with a foundation of really best-in-breed technologies. You can see all the logos there. Some of them I have a strong affinity for, like Tenable, for example. Some of them I haven't worked for, but I've worked with and are great partners, like Splunk, ServiceNow, et cetera. Those are some of the things we do offer, and I like, because this is Tech Thursday, I want to talk a little bit about the reference architecture, because this is what powers everything you're going to see that I'll show later. And there are a lot of pieces here. I talked about we pull in best of breed for a lot of things. Great example is Luminate. We have implemented zero trust architecture. You're going to see me work through that when I do the Lens demo to really make sure that we're securing access to all of our cloud SecOps platform. We have great partners like Insights or VirusTotal that provide a lot of context and threat intelligence. And then we do a lot of the work ourselves, generally within Splunk, but also in some other platforms, to really take a lot of data in and find really critical things for our customers, help them make sure that they're tackling security well. And the way we do that is we are organized with what we call our squad delivery model, which customers love, right? Our squad, there's a name squad. You know, Brittany may be your analyst who you work with every day. It allows them to get context. It allows them to get expertise. It allows them to be incredible partners and allies with our customers' security operations center personnel. So much so that I sometimes joke that what we do is we're a SaaS company, but the S in SaaS stands for superheroes as a service. And so if you think of our squads as superheroes in the service, if they're the Tony Starks of the world, then my role as Chief Technology Officer here, we build the Iron Man suits that give those squad members incredible capabilities. And it's not just our squad members, it's also our customers and our partners like SET Solutions. So with that, a little bit of preamble, I want to talk about some of those technologies we provide, some of those solutions that really allow our customers and our squad members to be superheroes. And I'm going to start with Deepwatch Lens. I want to give a little background. As I mentioned, I've been doing this on the vendor side 15 years, talked with an awful lot of CISOs. They always have roughly the same questions. They want a real scientific, objective measurement. How effective is their security operations center and their SecOps program in general? They want to know how that compares to their chosen sets of peers. Maybe it's, you know, I remember meeting with a retailer at RSA a few years ago who said, look, I know I'm in retail, but I consider the technology and the financial services companies to be my benchmark group. And so we want to allow somebody like that to evaluate, you know, where they at, but how they compare against that chosen peer group. And then if it doesn't stack up the way they want, what is the one next best thing that they should do? To answer those questions, we've had our maturity model version 1. We just went patent pending with our version 2. It's how we do a scientific and objective measurement of the effectiveness of somebody's SOC program. takes a variety of attributes into account. The types of data sources you have for visibility, your usage of advanced analytics, which ones you've got turned on, how well you have them tuned, as well as how comprehensively you're covering your environment. There are other pieces to this as well, but they yield a maturity score that help you really understand where you're at and how you can get better. And I can talk all day about that. The best way for you to see what Lens does and how it works is to actually try it yourself. So if you haven't already, please go out to lens.deepwatch.com/score. It's free. Sign up, give it a try, and tell us what you think. But the second best way is for me to actually run through it. So with that, I'm actually going to do a walkthrough. Let me just sanity check. Michael, let me know if this is not being shared. Otherwise, I am signing in to the deepwatch Lens product because we do take security seriously. You can see it's our zero trust architecture and multi-factor authentication have kicked in. So I am authenticating right now. And in a minute, it's going to load up. Now, this works for both customers and prospects. I'm going to come at it the way probably many of you are, somebody who doesn't have an existing relationship with deepwatch. So it's going to start by just laying out the same things I told you. Here's what Lens is going to do for you, let you see where you're at and how to get better. I mentioned that we ask for you to choose your peer group. So let's say that I am that retail CISO I talked to who says information technology and financial services are the benchmark groups that I consider myself against. Since we do that, it will immediately jump me into the Lens dashboard. Now, I'm going to talk through this in the same and show you what we're talking about in the same order I talked about before. Let's start with how effective is my security program? How effective is my SOC? And you can see I am landing right now with a score of 3.47 out of 10. And the very first question I might have is how do we even come up with that? So what we do with somebody for whom we don't have any existing relationship is we take information we know about typical customers, right? We have lots of customers at deepwatch across a variety of verticals. And so we have an idea of what people typically have when they start their journey with deepwatch. We know, for example, in terms of data sources, people usually have DNS, they usually have something like authentication. They have a variety of data sources. So it's loaded some basic ones for me. We also have an idea of the analytics that they use. Most people out of the gate, as with any sort of SIM solution, any sort of alerting solution in general, they don't normally start with everything turned on, or if they do, they kind of scream and say, I'm getting way more than I can handle. Maybe some of it is noise because it needs to be tuned. Maybe some of it are alerts that you're not yet ready to consume. You don't have the people or process to do so. So we find most people don't start with 100%. They normally start about 60%. And the same is true with enterprise coverage. All right, a great example, we even put in the narrative here, is firewalls are an important data source. If somebody has 30 firewalls, it's not atypical for them to start out of the gate with only shipping us data from 20 of those. Maybe it's just not worth the initial effort to tackle those remote office firewalls or something like that. So we come up with some basics. Now, right away, what I'm going to want to do is figure out how does, let me make this more reflective of my environment. So I'll add some data sources. Maybe I am all in on Google, for example. So I'll go ahead and, not guard duty. I'm going to add some additional technologies in. I've got those two. Maybe I'm also using Prisma as a CASB. And I'll finish that. So I've now changed this to more accurately reflect the data sources I have. And when I go back, you'll see that already it's reflected a different maturity score. Instead of 3.5, I'm up to 4.5 because that's more realistic. I can do the same thing with maybe I know I'm going to use 80% of my use cases the gate, and maybe I feel really confident that I'll cover 90% of my assets accordingly. So I'll go ahead and I make those changes, and now I have a maturity score that really accurately reflects what my environment looks like. The next thing I do is I compare that. And you can see even landing with a 4, that puts me a bit below my benchmark groups. Information's up at 6.7, retail's at 6. Even the deepwatch customer average is closer to 5.5. And so I may not be satisfied with that. I probably shouldn't be satisfied with that. There's nothing wrong with having a lower score, especially if it's appropriate for your company, your spending. But for most people, if they're below their benchmark group, they want to figure out how they can get better. And this is where what we will do is we will put in our top recommendations. For example, most customers, when they start, they don't have Active Directory in. And so we would say having Active Directory data source is an incredibly valuable data source. It allows us to detect malicious usage of credentials or maybe lateral movement or things like that. So we recommend you add that in. Now, as an actual customer, if you want to add that in when you work with your squad, you plan a rollout, it takes a little bit of time. As somebody just experimenting with no relationship with deepwatch, it's as simple for me as clicking add on the button. And you can see that that results in nearly a full point jump. Once I've chosen that top recommendation, we come up with the next best recommendations. And I can keep going through and deciding, yeah, I'll add firewalls and see how my score improves. Maybe there are things that I don't want to do. And I can just keep going through this as long as I want until I get to a score I want. Again, as a customer, it's actually a little more work than that. But this is the heart of what Lens does right now. It allows you to model, and if you're a customer, we'll load what we already know about your data sources, your analytics usage, your asset coverage. But it allows you to model, here's what my general maturity score would look like, here's how it compares, and here's where here's where I could take actions to actually improve it. I'm going to stop the run through there. I'm going to jump back into the slides. Hopefully that's kind of some compelling value. We've heard from a number of people who started using this that they really like it. They like that benchmarking. They like understanding where they at. And they say, you know, the next thing we want to see, we want to see some more info on exactly the things we're doing. We want to have a clear picture of the impacts of, say, adding that Active Directory in. What will it do to my license usage for my Splunk license and things like that? So we're almost at the point. We finish up our development cycle tomorrow, actually, and then we'll be doing our security testing and submitting it to the app stores. But we're almost at the point of actually putting this into a dedicated app. We have it today. It's a progressive web app. It works on any device you bring, which is good. But by putting it in a Lens app, an actual app, it allows us to provide that same level of information and detail anywhere anybody is. It allows us to do things like provide native alerts so that you know, if there's something really critical that your squad sees, hey, you know, we're seeing a great uptick in these sorts of events. We need to do some tuning, or we're really seeing that we have a gap with the latest 0-day, and there's a data source we need to add, or our threat hunters have completed a threat hunt and they found some things we want your attention on. We'll allow you to see that information right on your device. We'll also have some more interesting metrics, showing you where you're at, but comparing you to quartiles. I talked about mundane things like license usage or critical incidents that are aging. Those are important to making sure that your security operations center is working effectively. But we'll also have some interesting things showing you, outcomes. Customers with higher maturity scores, based on the data we see, they're faster to validate or they're faster to resolve issues. So a lot of things upcoming in our immediate next release, which is an app. We'll also expand on some of the simulation capabilities and expand our maturity model algorithm. I talked about the fact that it encompasses a handful of attributes. We've gotten a lot of feedback from people that they'd like to see more. in terms of outcomes, in terms of response time, ultimately tying it into frameworks like FAIR, for example, to actually get dollar impact. So we're working on adding those sorts of simulations in. And we hear this all the time from customers, very interested in what kind of coverage they have in the Mitre ATT&CK framework. We talk a bit in DevOps, we talk about shift left, but the same is true with Mitre ATT&CK. People want to know they have really good coverage across the spectrum, but they ideally want to know that they're trapping things on the left-hand side, the initial access areas of Mitre, as opposed to tackling all the things on the right-hand side where you're talking about exfiltration and such. So we are those use case analytics that drive that major component of the Lens score. We're actually making sure that those are all associated with various Mitre categories and TTPs so that we're able to provide that level of mapping. Some exciting stuff coming up with Mitre. I want to now talk about our second bit of technology we're working on, which is deepwatch Discover. And again, I want to set this up a little bit. We at deepwatch, we work with our customers with their Splunk environments. Splunk is a fantastic partner and a fantastic tool that can do literally 1,000 things. Allow you to do all sorts of deep dives, allow you to get easy graphs, do real-time analytics. And people love having that data to drive that action. One thing that our customers are concerned about, though, is that sometimes that can be costly. And everybody is quite happy to spend that money when they need the capabilities, but there's a lot of data out there where it's a large amount of data, but the amount of value that they get is not entirely clear. And so in the case of Discover, we want to tackle a couple of really interesting things in order to let people control those budgets and decide, when they should spend money on data. We want to allow them to do low-risk experimentation with new data sources. And when they are doing that, we want to use some advanced analytics to deliver what would otherwise be hidden insights into what's happening in their environment as a result of looking at that data. The way we're going to do that is with, I'm going to show just a logical architecture. We do that today with Splunk. That's kind of the top level. But we are working on the Discover product to actually allow you to take much larger amounts of data at a different price point. We're then going to use some ML, which I'll talk about in a minute. I know ML can be an eye-rolling term, but in this case, I'm pretty proud of some of the things we're working on, to periodically deliver a Discover briefing that gives you those otherwise hidden insights. And if you find that there's a lot of value, you may want to put that data into Splunk. You'll notice, right, Splunk does a ton of things, as I said, 1,000 things really well. Discover is not intended to do those 1,000 things. It's intended to help you understand some things you wouldn't otherwise see and make those decisions on, yeah, I actually need this capability within Splunk. Now, let me talk at a deeper level about exactly what's happening there. And I'm going to focus on just a couple of key areas. We are starting with taking in a variety of data sources, but at the same time, we're not trying to take in everything and anything. We're focusing on some critical areas. We want to look for things that will clue us in on command execution or abuse of PowerShell or CLI. We want to look at network telemetry to find things that are unusual in terms of data exfiltration or indicative of command and control. We want to look at authentication data to help us understand normal versus abnormal use of credentials and maybe a hint at credential compromise or lateral movement. Lastly, we want to look at DNS because DNS data has a wealth of information buried under even more noise, but there's really good insight in there about command and control, ransomware, and some other items. So we're picking a set of technologies that will ingest very large amounts of data from, and you can see in the lower left portion of this, we are leveraging some cloud provider technologies. We're using AWS right now because they bootstrap us the best. We've got Athena, We're using S3. I'm not showing it in here, but we do actually have SageMaker is in the mix as well to allow us to do some interesting ML. And then we'll make that available initially via an API and via Lens briefings, but we'll actually show some really interesting things. I want to give some examples. Here's a first example, and this deals with some of our initial analytics. We think DNS tunneling and domain generation algorithms, right? Seeing that there are things that are going out to sites that are probably command and control botnets. These are problems our customers have. And so on the left, you're seeing it's generally SPL. It's non-trivial SPL, but it is just straight kind of put in Splunk, do a query. But I've circled, we're doing some interesting things. In this particular case, we're using part of the Splunk ML toolkit, the random forest algorithms, which help with turning, help closing the loop on initial findings and making better decisions for future findings. I'm showing on the right some actual data that we found where these were DNS queries and domains that we found in a customer environment that they looked weird, right? Normally DNS names are, they're human readable. When you see things that look like they're pure entropy, that's what the top level of the ML can do. It's pretty, I shouldn't say easy, I couldn't write this SPL, but it is possible with just regular expressions and pattern matching to find certain levels of entropy. And it will yield outcomes like this. And some of them, like the top one that is circled, that is absolutely not human readable. And that's the kind of thing we want to circle in on. Our ML with random forest, we actually found things like that quite a bit. And as it turned out, there are a variety of cloud service providers that use this as just a part of their normal algorithms. Dropbox or Box or Dropcam or things like that. Office 365 is another one where it's part of how the system works that they generate these kind of squirrely names. Our algorithms will start learning those as we get larger data sets and are able to weed those things out so that we're not yielding the kind of false positives you would get if you were just purely trying to do this with regular expressions and pattern matching. The bottom one was another one where it was actually, too many consonants in a row, definitely not human readable, but actually as a result of passing through the algorithms, that one, we had a pretty high level of confidence that something weird was going on there, and tying in with some of our threat intelligence sources we talk about, some of the work our original researchers do. That one actually was indicative of a problem. Turned out it wasn't a compromise. It was just something the customer didn't know about their environment and some of their infrastructure that, even though it wasn't directly a security problem, was the kind of thing that merited attention from the SOC team to make sure that they had the proper controls and monitoring in place. So a great example of leveraging ML even in our existing toolkits to find something unusual. This one's more fun. This we're actually looking at, this is inside Jupyter Notebook, and this is output from SageMaker. This is authentication data. And, when I try to play data scientist, I talk about the fact that our data scientist actually said it wasn't super thrilled with the model so far because the curve is overfit to the data, but it is yielding some interesting things. This is looking and classifying what we think a normal developer login looks like. And then I've circled in green some outliers. Now, outliers are just that. They're just outliers. It's just anomalies. In fact, every data set has outliers. But part of the interest in the ML here is that when we start consistently seeing outliers, or when the outliers are unusual outliers for that peer group, right? As an example, developers, it's really common for developers to log in from different IPs at different times because that's just the nature of development, especially over VPNs or using various resources. So we're not going to worry too much about those, but seeing developers log in from unusual geos is something we don't expect to see. Or seeing developers accessing business systems that are outside of what a normal developer peer group activity is, those things are things we investigate. This is where the real power of Discover ML comes from, as we think it will allow us to start peeling off some really interesting findings. And you can see the analytics I've got. I mentioned them before, but DNS and domain generation algorithms, we think those are pretty solid analytics we've already got in place. We have a variety of strange command line or PowerShell. This is very much kind of what you see with people living off the land, and especially when they're doing movement throughout your environment. Data exfiltration is an obvious one. There are easy types of data exfiltration to find. Right, this system all of a sudden just sent 3 or 4 gigabytes off to Dropbox, and it's never done that before. Or even worse, it's to a known bad domain. You can find those with patterns, but the low and slow, finding something like why is what nominally should be an IP phone that, like all other IP phones, has very deterministic data streams to very deterministic spaces. Why is this thing actually continuously sending small amounts of data out to an external spot? Those types of findings, we have some very interesting analytics on. There's suspicious user behavior. I mentioned unusual geos, impossible travel, right, where you find somebody is actually doing console logins in 2 different spots where they couldn't have possibly gotten that geographically disparate. Good things to find, happens all the time. And then that admin traffic is another one. And I'll use the example. It's not unusual to see IoT devices, polycoms, video conferencing, Zoom rooms. It's very unusual to see interactive SSH or RDP traffic going to those. And so pulling out those anomalies is important, but then understanding when it looks absolutely nothing like its other peer group is stuff we're working on and stuff we're really interested in. So hopefully that gives a bit of a taste of some of the technology we're working on, especially in the case of Discover. I like this slide a lot because it really is representative of some of the interesting technology capabilities we have today that we didn't have in the past. The last company I worked for, ExtraHop, had actually had data science teams since 2012. In 2012, data scientists had to bring a lot of their own tools. Right? They had to bring a lot of their own programming, a lot of their own capabilities. When I was at Tenable, we bootstrapped our own data science team in 2016, and the same was true. There was as much time spent building your own systems in infrastructure. Today, there's some really fascinating tools out there. We're using a lot of the AWS tools. They really advance our capabilities to get to the heart of building interesting models that find things quickly, and data collection has gotten a lot better. It was challenging to collect data at volumes in 2012 or in 2015. 2020, AWS, things like Glue or Kinesis, they're really good at helping us grab huge amounts of data quickly. So we're really excited about the kind of things we can do with this, and really excited to partner with our customers to hear the kind of problems, the kind of data sets they have where they think there's value, they want to find out if there's value, and we can help work with them to create interesting findings that help them really zero in on the areas in the environment they need to tackle. That leads me to a last point I always like to make, right? I started with food, I want to end with food. And this is really, it's not necessarily about food, it's not necessarily about technology, it's really about good ideas, right? I love the story on nachos. Nachos were created when a customer asked the cook to make her a new snack, something she hadn't had before, right? The same is true. Teflon coated pans didn't come about because the inventor said, I need to make this. It came about because his wife said, why are you wasting your time putting that slippery stuff on fishing nets. I've got pots I've got to scrub every day, and I would really like it there. In fact, even the maturity model we talked about, our maturity model version 2. Version 1 came from a very specific customer ask that we had in 2018. Somebody said, look, I understand that I should have this, I should have that, but can't you simplify it, make it objective, and really help me understand where I am at in my SecOps program? The point of all this is that each one of these was a customer who came up with an interesting idea. We at deepwatch, we firmly believe in this, so much so that we have our customer sponsor program. Anything we're developing, those ML algorithms, the lens dashboards I showed, et cetera, we strive to have any handful, 3 to 5, 7 customers who help us design every one of those things. And when I say help us design, it's not just to answer some questions. It's actually get embedded in our SDLC, meet with our developers, meet with our UX designers, talk with our product managers, review wireframes, go through use cases, actually be beta customers, get test flight on your phone to test out the Lens app before we release it. That's where we come up with our best technology innovations. And so I'm hoping that those of you on this call are interested or know somebody be interested. If you do, point them deepwatch's way. We firmly believe you'll have the best ideas, and we're excited to actually help create them. So with that, Michael, that's all the prepared content I had. Should we flip it around and see if we've got any good questions from the audience?
So I know some questions will end up coming, but I did want to ask about about the models that you're building out for ML. And yeah, I know a lot of people kind of eye roll on that, but I've always thought that if you can specialize on some of your models and focus on a few examples versus trying to boil the ocean with those, that you can get some better results. I mean, is that kind of how it seems like that's how you're approaching it at this point?
I think that's right. ML is eye rolling because people talk about it as a magic technology. The end of the day, what ML is really there for is to allow you to do things at speed and scale and with iteration that you could do as a human. It just take you a lot longer, and would would be a lot more expensive. So we're starting with our ML with the things that we know our threat hunters already do. Authentication is a great example. A good threat hunter will already go through authentication and spend a lot of time trying to find things that look a little hinky, so that they can then deep dive on that. The ML at its best is going to bootstrap that threat hunter, so that instead of spending all the time collecting the data, setting up the queries, looking for the outliers, it's going to automate and say, look, here are the things that don't fit. And the threat hunter will pick that up, maybe find something that is, whoa, we got to do something. But even if they don't, even if they say, yeah, this is just an anomaly, it's interesting, but it's not a problem. By then feeding that back into the algorithm and providing that feedback and labeling back in, the next time the machine will be better at presenting things that truly are things you should pay attention to. So it makes you better, makes you stronger, faster. Those sets of algorithms I've talked about, we think those are the really good ones. They're things that are well-worn techniques for threat hunters already, and we're bringing an ability to do it way faster, way better, and more focused.
Yeah, and I like to joke that the logging into weird locations and the PowerShell example are the go-tos for those types of IOCs and anything you can look at. But I mean, those are given as examples for good reasons, because those are things you can knock out pretty quickly and turn back around, like you said, into your model and get some really good data points in your from your organization and what's happening pretty quickly. So
yeah, and again, this is where some of the algorithms really help, right? Again, it is not unusual. I mean, I pre-COVID, I would normally have about 200,000 air miles a year, and so I would come from all sorts of geos all the time, and so if you're solely looking for, hey, where's the login that's weird? Well, every login I have is weird, more or less. So you need to be able to understand that my weird is actually normal for me, and probably is normal for Tim West, as an example as well. But when one of my crack developers who works from home every day and is always working on the same system, when he's got an unusual geo, that's different. And so ML can help you without needing to spend all the time and effort to say, I need to pre-label everybody as a developer or a clueless executive or a sales guy. The system learning, this looks like it should be an executive, and so this looks like normal, but if you want to dig in, go for it. That saves a threat hunter a huge amount of time and gives much better results.
Yep. So on the lens side for the maturity model, so that's something we're working on internally as well, that it's beyond just I don't want to say just, it's the whole model, and you're focusing on, if I understand it, the SOC type side of things, which is obviously what you guys do and do well. I'm definitely interested in that. What I see it as, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it's something that you can get a fairly quick win from a customer's point of view to go in there and add that stuff. So, I mean, have you seen any customers get some wins out of that? Can you provide some examples on that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So one of our customers, they were actually a prospect, and we launched Lens. They were one of our customer sponsors. They came in right at the start. And they really liked how it helped them understand where they were at. But then the interesting thing was they brought in their investor partners who said, we love this. We'd love to know what this looks like across our whole portfolio of companies. And so we ended up using it across a variety of their portfolio companies, and they were able to see which portfolio companies were doing really well and which portfolio companies are maybe behind their chosen peer set. But what was even more interesting to them was they were able to see some diversity that they didn't want. There was a tremendous variation in the number of data sources, and they said, look, we have some best practices that work really well for certain companies. Why not use them across a whole portfolio so everybody gets the benefit of the learning that one company has come on? They also saw a variety of technology usage, and our maturity model is fairly vendor agnostic, right? We think you can be successful with any variety of technology. If you're buying Joe's Crab Shack's EDR product, maybe that's not so good, but CrowdStrike, CyberReason, SentinelOne, you can be successful with all of them. But as a CISO in a federated environment, or as a portfolio manager saying that, gosh, we're using 5 different vendors all solving one problem, and if we could consolidate to one, it would not materially impact the things we might lose, wouldn't really change our maturity score too much. That was a tremendous win for them to look at how can we, again, just all share this knowledge, share practices, and maybe consolidate some of the things we do so we can spend time on our core business instead of on, how we figure out what the best data source for a multi-factor is.
Gotcha. Now, I do want to alleviate, because, we all are a bunch of security paranoid people. I want to give you a chance to alleviate some concerns that are probably going to come up about when you enter data into there, that kind of thing. Can you get into that? Because you and I have talked about that privately, but I wanted to get into that a little bit.
No, it's a fantastic question. I figured it would come up in Q&A if nothing else, because that is the question people always ask, is say, okay, I'm going to tell you the data sources. Who gets to see that? So the end answer is the only people who get to see that are you and your squad. And one of the things we're actually doing in the Lens app is we're even figuring out if we need more granular level of control within a company. We think we do. It's how many levels we're going to go at. But in terms of those industry averages and such, nobody sees exactly what your choices are. They only see what the industry average is. And they only, you may or may not have seen this in the scoreboard in the app, but we actually have a little caveat on there. We only show industries for which we have a large enough data set to keep the data anonymized. So when you go in, you fill out, I want all of these data sources and this and that. We will say, okay, you have a 4.5 score and you are a member of the aerospace industry. And that becomes part of the aggregate data that if somebody else logs in and they choose aerospace industry, they can see the industry average. But if you're the only participant in that industry, we actually won't show that industry because we don't want somebody to say, oh, I know deepwatch has Boeing as their only aerospace customer and the aerospace average is 4.1, so Boeing's got a 4.1. So we make sure there's enough data to maintain anonymity. In my wildest dreams, as this becomes successful enough, we may have the opportunity to leverage some more interesting technology like differential privacy to allow us to provide more details on what's typical for your environment without losing that confidentiality for people who've put data in. Differential privacy requires data sets orders of magnitude bigger than we have right now, so that's aspirational. But that's, from the zero trust you saw me go through to even log in, through where we're storing the data, we're very, very much putting the customer data privacy first. And so we can talk about the specific ways that we protect that data, et cetera, but the short of it is your specific answer is never shared, just some aggregate information when the sample size is large enough.
Gotcha. Yeah, I appreciate that because that's definitely something when you and I were talking about it was like, let me ask a question.
Yeah, it's and it's something I've experienced, and I think you've experienced as well, Michael, throughout the careers. In the security industry, one thing we're a little bit different than other industries about, and I think it's a good thing, is we are much more conscientious about our data and who it's being shared with. So that I think is going to be the most exciting thing we can do in Lens is make it easier to share data and all of us good guys work together against the bad guys while still maintaining that level of data security and privacy that we're really good at that other industries maybe aren't quite as conscientious about.
Gotcha. So I want to diverge a little bit over what some of the stuff you've talked about because from the familiarity I have with deepwatch, one of the things that's always struck me with you guys is your squad model. And we had a conversation the other day with somebody who kind of they weren't talking about squad model specifically, but they were concerned with how something like that would work based on making it almost like you have tribal knowledge versus documentation, and they would rather train people on the best practices all the way around, and it doesn't matter who talks to the customer, they would be trained the right way. And I push back on that a little bit, and we have internally. Can you go over why you feel and the squad model is superior in how you're doing things and how it benefits a customer?
Yeah, that's a great point. And they're not wrong, by the way, with the notion. Ideally, there are certain types of processes, investigations, alerts where you should just have a playbook, right? And you should be able to grab anybody off the street and they can run the playbook. And there are a lot of those. What I would say is 10 years ago, the way that you tackled that was by having a really good process, documentation, training, et cetera. What I would say today is most of those jobs that it is purely a science like that, automation can play a big role in that. And that was part in our reference architecture, one of the things I talked about. We actually have SOAR at the heart of everything we do. We use Cortex. So we already automate a huge amount of stuff where there is just, hey, here's the standard best practice. When something like this comes up, we know what tip providers to pull in. We know what data to aggregate. We know how to assess the impact and open a ticket or get somebody's eyeballs on it. For much, especially the more sophisticated attacks, and they're, more sophisticated attacks are something everybody deals with every day now. We no longer think, oh, it's just this APT, why would they ever target me? Everybody is aware that these are criminal enterprises that are making money, and they bring their A game. The defense for that, there's as much art as there is science. And in that case, this is where our squad and being closely allied with our customers' SOC personnel, this is where we think it differentiates us from a traditional MSSP. A traditional MSSP either just only has automation or kind of people who just know basics. And so they might say, well, this looks weird, but I don't know. So the only thing I can do is open a ticket, and I need you to go take a look at it. Our squad gets to know your business, know your environment, know the data sources, know normal. And so it allows us to handle a lot of things where we go, yeah, that's, I never forget, I had a customer who said, I have these vendor boxes, and the way they work is they SSH out to the vendor's internet site, and I hate it, but I have no choice. And so it bugs me every time some auditor or Yahoo comes in and says, oh, you got outbound SSH. I know. You can codify that to a degree, but it also really helps to have somebody you work with every day who knows that, who gets bootstrapped with that. And by the same token, we want to make sure that when we see something, if our squads know your business, your context well enough, they may ring you up for something in the middle of the night that a process book, somebody who didn't have that context, they might look at it and go, this isn't that unusual. This is medium. This can wait till morning. So we all know that in sports, right? That the highest performing teams are the ones that know each other, trust each other, know each other's strengths and weaknesses. We think the same is true in security. And as a result, having a consistent teammate in your squad, we think is the right way to go. And that's what our customers, that's what they tell us is, they love their squads, and they love the genius that those squads bring, and they love the interaction that they get. So it's not wrong that you should have a playbook, but I would, as a CTO, I'd tell you, your playbook should be for the robots. And there's still going to be a lot of work that requires a really great team member, and our squads are the way we do that.
Awesome. I appreciate you running that down. That's one of the things that I saw that set you guys apart. Because you can still have a playbook even for the humans to some degree, but they can move different directions from that playbook if they have to, based on their knowledge. So, and it's not like you guys are bringing people in and then having them leave in a week. They're sticking around and working with you for a while.
Well, yeah, and and that would be a knock. Traditional MSSPs, one of the big levels of dissatisfaction. It's the same thing we all experience, right? When you call a helpline and you get somebody who doesn't know much about you, and if they can't resolve it, or if you have the problem again, you call in, you get somebody different. Nobody likes that. And so our squad model is not only outbound facing, but it impacts how we hire and who we hire. We try to hire people. We're hiring people who we know are going to become team members and are in for the long haul. And so it means it takes us a little more time to find the right people, but it also means we're bringing in people who will be here for a while, and we'll be with our customers for a while.
That's good stuff. All right. Well, I appreciate it. Corey, Tim, Todd, thank you very much for jumping on this Tech Thursday with us. This has been good info. I'm really excited about the Lens stuff, especially since that's an initiative we have internally as well from a maturity model standpoint to help our customers. So I'm actually looking forward to partnering with you on that, pushing people to that. Again, can you share that URL again?
I absolutely can. Hold on, let's put it up. It is lens.deepwatch.com/score.
Awesome. Appreciate that. So yeah, everybody on here, if you've got time to go play around with the lens product, please go look at it to try to get it scored, start getting an idea of what you've got out there. We'll start winding this down now. Again, Corey, thank you very much for the time. Really appreciate it. Everybody, again, if you did not get a gift card, let Lauren know. You should be able to get that, and be on the lookout for that questionnaire at the end, and get yourself in that drawing for a $100 gift card. Really would appreciate you answering that. And thanks again to Deepwatch and Corey. Thank you very much for being on.
Thank you, Michael, and thank you everybody for attending. Really enjoyed the conversation. Look forward to talking with you again.
Have a good rest of your day, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.